gents, welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now.
Jimothy.
So, welcome to a new series, ladies and gents, called These Cards Need to Be... Yes, insert your own ideas right there, ladies and gents, because there are a few cards that potentially are in the meta game that we could probably do without, and there are some cards that are on the ban list that we could probably do with. So today I'm going to speak about 3 cards, and then after I spoke about them, we'll have an argument in the comments whether or not you think I am right, whether or not there's some method behind the madness, or whether or not it's just a really bad hot take. So without wasting any more time, ladies and gents, let's just get straight into it. Now, the first card I want to talk about is Triple Tactics Talents. Now, the more and more I think about this card, the more and more I actually realized and really do believe that this card's got a big problem. It's polarizing. All right, so hear me out. Going first, yeah, I think this card is absolutely busted. I feel like it makes the game unfair for your opponent if you get to resolve it going first, and I feel like it gives you way too much advantage. Hand knowledge, ladies and gents, is just like the zenith when it comes to effects in the game that can influence the match. It's like the pinnacle. Information is just way far and beyond greater than anything else that your opponent can do, because you can set up accordingly. You can sculpt your plays in a way where it plays around the cards that you've got access to. Not only that, you can shuffle away your opponent's most important card that relates to your strategy, and I think that is super busted. Now, with the ban list in mind, even though this video is not directly linked to the ban list, I do feel like Triple Tactics Talent needs to be addressed. Going first, ripping a card out your opponent's hand for them having the audacity to try and slow you down from making this unbreakable stupid board is, I think, out of this world, ladies and gents. I think it's so unfair, like it's ridiculous. Now, I get there's unfair cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! However, when you're hand trapping your opponent, just trying to make them make a somewhat of a weaker board and you get punished for it, I think it's ridiculous. However, I do understand the card going second. So going second, it does not feel as oppressive. You're already playing into interruptions. You're already playing into negates, potentially even hand traps as well to back those cards up on field. So I don't feel like it's much of a problem. And there's quite a high chance that it will get negated by something, whether that be an Ash Blossom, whether that be a Omni Negate. Something down the line is going to stop that card. Or potentially it might even resolve, but there's not enough effects to do things. So I do think going second, it's much more of a viable option, but going first, ladies and gents, and actually resolving it is just way too unfair. And there's been a few scenarios where I've tried to play the card, well, tried to play a card, i.e. like hand trap, whether that's like Ash Blossom, I don't know, Phantasme, for example, just some kind of interaction on my opponent's turn to stop them from just completely going off, and I get punished by talents. And I look at my opponent, I just think to myself, this is not fair. This is just ridiculous. Like, how am I getting punished for trying to play the game, and now I'm going to be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Even less, because they're going to set up their board, know exactly what I'm going to got in my hand apart from my top deck, which probably might even be inconsequential if they manage to just go 75% of 100% combo. It's just crazy. So in my opinion, talents needs to be dropped to 1. Let's just have it like Kobai. If you rip it, you rip it. It's Saki. It is what it is, and it at least it's still in the game, so players can still enjoy the card. However, I do think going first is just way too strong. If it resolves, there is a chance that it doesn't, but with people playing like 15 to 18 hand traps in the main deck, ladies and gents, there's a high probability that it will resolve, and it could potentially win you the game. Okay, so the next controversial card on this list, ladies and gents, is Dimension Shifter, and I think this card needs to remain at 3. Now, hear me out. I do not personally like playing against this card, especially with a deck that just crumbles to it. I think it's just severely unfair. I think shutting off your graveyard from the hand is a little bit busted. However, now listen to this. I think it's needed in the format, and I think that people that say that want Shifter ban want to play the game in a specific way. And the reason I say this is because a lot of the decks out there use the graveyard almost like a second hand. They're reviving, they're getting resources, they've got effects that are changing in the graveyard. And I get it, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gone that way, but there's no given right to say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to be played that way. And that's the reason why I think Shifter should just be left where it is. It's always going to be a threat, a little bit like Nibiru. If you just decide to just combo too much, you could get punished for it. If you lean too heavily into your graveyard, you should get punished for it. It shouldn't just be a a sense where you can literally just play unhindered, and I think that's what Shifter does, a lot like how Nibiru effectively works. There are workarounds. You can make a half board, kind of like what happens with if you get like any of the Mulch armies. Some decks you just can't play, and it is what it is. There's obviously outs in there, there's cross out, there's Core by the Grave of that nature, but very other few things hit it, and I feel like it does need to be that way. And I like the way that they design Shifter, because past your first turn, it's more or less a dead draw unless you've got some way to utilize it or get it out of your hand or use it as a fusion material. It doesn't really do anything else apart from that first turn. If you don't draw it in that opening hand, you realistically cannot use it. So I do think Shifter needs to stay where it is. That doesn't mean that I like the card. That doesn't mean I like playing against the card, because I hate playing against the card if I'm not using if I'm using a graveyard eccentric deck. But I do understand why it's there, and I do feel like not every deck should have to play out the graveyard as this crazy wombo combo deck. So yeah, flame me in the comments for your ideas. That's just my thinking upon it. Shifter needs to stay at 3 in my opinion. So, seeing as I've talked about a couple of cards, I feel like I need to speak about a card that should potentially be, this card should definitely be released in a sense, and that is Unchained Shavara. Now, I do know that previously this card was a little bit busted. It kind of acted like a Core by the Grave for Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler and Ghost Mourner, any kind of targeted negation. It just allowed you to dodge it, especially if you're playing any kind of like Fiend strategy. However, I do think there's a lot of other things in the meta that actually do a lot more and are a lot more unfair, and I don't think Unchained Shavara should necessarily be on there for its sins. You do have, is it Garunic's High Avatar Kirin, or one of the Fire King cards that basically acts in the same vein as Shavara, potentially even worse because it can pop a card from hand, which is I think that's crazy. But yeah, it's just the fact that Unchained didn't really have a chance to shine. It had its moment in the sun, and then it came to an abrupt end, and it just got power crept out of existence. Like, play Unchained, even with the Fiendsmith stuff, against some of the stuff that's around now, and it just feels severely lacking in some departments. And I think Shavara could be a little bit of a piece to kind of invigorate those players, because we didn't even have the card for that long, and it just got absolutely brutalized on the ban list, just straight down to 1. So I do think Shavara could come back. But anyway, ladies and gents, those are my 3 takes. Now, what do you think? Obviously, these are just my opinions. These are my thoughts and feelings. Feel free to get at me in that comment section. I'm all here for it. Let me hear your reasoning. Let me hear some of the decisions behind why you think said card should be or should not be here or not here. And give me some suggestions on what cards you think in the future will be a problem. This is not as an extensive list by any stretch of the imagination. There's a whole host of cards that I could definitely speak about, but I thought I'd start with these 3. I think Triple Tactics Talent, in my mind, is probably one of the cards that needs to be addressed on the next ban list. That's not even just generally, just the next ban list, because I think going first, that card's busted. I think it should have had a stipulation where it's, I don't know, something to do with having cards on field. Like, I don't know, just it needs to be less oppressive going first and just how it is going second. And I know it's hard to balance cards because of the way that Yu-Gi-Oh is, but I do think that's one of the cards that they didn't quite tune up properly. But yeah. But anyway, we find ourselves at the end of another video. As always, if you do like this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.